So let me break down phase 4, which was my second strength phase after I had kind of tested and then started rebuilding. And this was an intensification phase, which just means that I'm doing fewer repetitions and handling heavier weights. Now, how I set this up, so my ability to handle intensification phases and continue to make progress is not as good as my ability to handle phases where I'm doing a higher number of repetitions and more volume of training. And that's probably true of most people. So whereas in the previous phase, I did 4 hard weeks of training without a break in between, this one I did only 3 weeks of hard training. Week 1 was sort of a rest recovery week, so it was nice and easy. I basically cut the amount of total repetitions and sets that I was doing down by about 50%. I still kept the weights fairly heavy, but I had lots of repetitions in the tank, so I was not pushing this to the limit at all. And then weeks 2 to 4 were actually hard, where I was going, right up to what I could do with good form on my hard work sets. Sometimes we call this 1 down and 3 up. So 1 easy week and 3 up weeks. So how I had set this up was I was doing 2 days of training focusing on my deadlift. On Monday, I did a podium deadlift. So I was basically standing on, in this case, an 1.5 inch platform. So in effect, it makes the bar lower, it makes the range of motion greater on the exercise. And I did 3 to 4 sets of 2 to 4 repetitions. The reason why that was an effective choice for me was twofold. Number one, the weak part of my lift is at the start, so that makes me focus on my strength in that bottom position a little bit more. Also, because it's a harder variation, it means that I could only lift less total weight, which means less total stress on my body. So sometimes it's nice to throw in a variation that's more difficult. You're still taxing the muscles really hard, but the total kind of strain on the body is less because the total amount of weight that I'm loading onto my spine and muscles is also less. I also did a lot of abdominal training. That was something I carried through from the previous cycle, which helped me a lot. All of this stuff was done with no belt, and one of the things I was trying to do was get my core a lot stronger so that in my final peaking phase, when I added that belt, it would give me a really extra boost of performance. So that brings us to the Friday workout, which was really hard. I wanted to be the freshest for this one. That's why I had a nice big gap in between. So I had the biggest rest coming into Friday. And I was handling the heaviest weights. So I did just a regular trap bar deadlift, and I did something called wave loading. So I basically did a set of 3, then I would increase the weight. I did a set of 2, increase the weight again, do a set of 1, then I would drop the weight back down, do another set of 3, another set of 2, and another set of 1. Now ideally when you're doing this, you want that second wave to be heavier than the first wave. That's how that is usually going to work the best. Now, the reason why wave training can be really effective for some people is that it adds in a fair amount of total volume, but you do get some touches on some really heavy sets, including doubles and singles. Now, this could be set up in multiple different ways and multiple different rep schemes. You could do 6-4-2s, you could do anything like that. I chose 3-2-1 because I wanted to start building the loads up and seeing sort of roughly where I was at with no belt. I was able to progress this nicely for a couple weeks, but I really could only make 2 to 3 weeks of progress on this. By the time I got to that final week of training, I was actually backsliding, and that's when I knew it was time to end that intensification phase and move on to the next phase of my program.